taken care of was for some of those in-between things to have a trilogy look at as things came up that were on the city side that could not be deemed a pass-through. That's the process that's been using for the last 10 years that you've been up here. I'm not sure what you're looking for, but that's what we've done and that's what we've been doing. Yes, sir. And this is Mr. Underwood with Trilogy. Yes, sir.
So one of the items we'd like to take care of as soon as we're under contract is to sit down with the inspection company Veritas, the operating company USW, and the engineering company Trilogy Engineering, and make sure everything we do works seamlessly in the city and efficiently in the city. We're expecting to have that meeting, but I think it's most important for those three companies all to be under contract before we start sitting down and talking about that sort of stuff. So anything I can do to help the contracting piece of this, I'm willing to do it. I'm sure US Water is willing to do it. But I think it's a little premature for us to sit down and talk about how we're going to do things when we're not even under contract.
Sure. Makes sense.
Well, and if I might, in the contract as it reads now, what it is a $3,000 a month retainer for all services as requested by the city that are not in the city's fee schedule as pass-through fees. So,
Yeah, I would agree. I just didn't feel comfortable making a decision based and I didn't get a chance to finish reading the packet, which I'm pretty sure none of council did. So that's why I moved as the mayor of a special meeting, just to give me a couple of days and the rest of council to make an adequate and educated decision, which we already said that we would love to move forward with them. I just have to.
okay, and if I can set you up as, if that motion were to go through, if I can set you up as to how you can go through this. This is not something that Trilogy drafted. It's a standard professional services contract used by our firm, so we drafted it, we didn't review it. We drafted it, and the only thing that we put in there were the terms that the mayor who negotiated per your direction, the $3,000 a month retainer. Anything over that that's within the budget could still be spent. So if you read through this, that's how that will read. And then we used as the scope of services, the actual RFQ that the city council approved.
Yes, ma'am.
So we, yeah.
I'll
I'm just trying to help you read when you
Yes,
do
ma'am.
go
Thank you.
through
I
it.
would love to have that conversation with you.
So, Mr. Mayor, I haven't had several conversations with Mr. Underwood and Trilogy and USW. I understand that. In the scope of the $3,000 retainer per month, was the question even where the line item is going to come from. And so then the question comes in, is the fee schedule that is set, which is in the back, going back to number 6, simply is, are we charging the company the same rate to where we're not charging less? So this is, hopefully we'll get these answers to these questions in the special meeting. That's what I'm trying to get out there.
Agree. So on the special meeting, you're also going to want to have the fee schedule, the city fee schedule. You have their fee schedule so that you can look at those.
Mr. Underwood, we've been utilizing your services between you and engineer David Peters and a couple of people. And each time that we've had you review plats or plans, those have been paid and we recouped it from the developer. So we can meet and discuss that, but that's what's been taking place, what, 6, 7 months?
Correct.
Something like that?
Yes, sir.
So that's the process, and again, just keeping, as has come up before, this has been shared with council, and just wanted to make sure we share it again so the record's clear, that similar to Bureau Veritas, when the developer's involved, that it's gonna be a pass-through, so to speak, plus the 15% admin. Okay, anything else for Mr. Underwood? Thank you, sir.
Call for the question.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed have the same right? Ayes have it. On item 10,
No.
9. Discuss and consider operation policies, budget procedures, and finalize a contract for Public Works and USW. Councilman Rowland.
again, for council, I've been talking back and forth with Mr. Boswick based upon our last workshop that we had. Again, this is not a short thing we're gonna get resolved, but again, the reason why it's on the agenda is because we need to continue to talk about it. We need to continue to take a bite out of this apple. I know that the contract was one of the main sticking points. But as far as council's response, we're trying to figure, I mean, contract is good, but there were so many moving pieces. When are we gonna get into the actual discussion about the department and the functionality? That's why I have, you know, that's why it's worded like this. And so if that's a second additional meeting that we need to have, we can get that scheduled. But I said, again, Mr. Corey has sent me some information, and so whenever council is ready to have a discussion, because again, the only way we can have a discussion is for it to be on the agenda.
And I would say we don't have a completed contract before you this evening anyway. We are, unless further action has been taken since,
No.
okay, yeah, so there's
So
a,
that could be a workshop.
the,
May I have a quick second with council? Good evening, and thank you for taking the time for hearing us out. The contract has already been reviewed by a third party, which has been the engineer, who's made some suggestions to the contract, which was also reviewed by the attorney. And now I believe it's back with the city and needs to be reviewed and then come back to USW so we can finalize it, okay? That's part number one. Number two, what you're suggesting, Councilman Rowland, is that there's a transition plan put in place, and that's typical. So what I'll do is I'll provide the council and the mayor with a transition plan on how things will transpire once the contract's signed. Week one, we'll convert over the software work order billing system. I'm sorry, week one, you know, acquire personnel, the city personnel, or hire outside additional personnel. Week two, you know, transition the software work order billing system. So there are multiple pieces that play in the part of once the contract is signed, it's a transition plan. So I'll get that presented over to you by the end of the week.
Okay, Councilman?
So thank you, Mr. Boswick. The reason why I asked for this to be on the agenda is for us to have a conversation, because the contract speaks to a direction. We have not had subsequent conversations about the direction, the cause and effect of moving forth with just the maintenance contract or having USW having the entire contract. And so the reason why I have it on here again is for us to hear it, see it, touch it. What is it gonna look like? Well, if we go to option A, option B, option C, and so I know we may not be at a point tonight to sign on a contract, but I just want us to know that we're not just simply bringing them in. There's some functionalities, and I don't think we've seen the totality of what option A or option B looks like. And if, JJ, you get ready to step out, you wanted to, I'm about to bring you.
But we understand that we have step one, step two, what option A or B is, but that's not a 15-minute conversation. That's a dialogue that we need to have at a special meeting when we have 12 more items to go through, and it's 9:30. So being strategic, if we can't possibly vote on it or have a short dialogue conversation for us to move somewhere, we're not gonna move anywhere tonight.
I get it.
So how about we move to give Mr. Boswick again, to have a workshop, so that way he can paint that picture for us. So what days are you able to?
So on July 9th, we had the workshop, and I thought that we were in position to go ahead and move forward with finalizing the contract upon additional information being provided to council.
No, I mean, some of council felt like we wanted an additional workshop to be able to further have that dialogue, because, I mean, what we had a meeting for about an hour and 30 minutes, I don't think any one of us felt comfortable enough to make a decision, or if we was all in agreement on one accord where we should go. At least I didn't. I still had questions that I wanted to ask at a subsequent workshop. Once we left there, we said we was gonna have another meeting. So if we could, what does your schedule look like in the next couple of weeks? Or if you could get how you did the first time with Councilman Brian, and we have a subsequent workshop.
So that's correct, but I just want us to be very clear. We're in a temporary contract with USW. The clock has started like 90 to 120 days ago.
Yes, sir.
This is the reason why I asked for it to be put on the agenda. We may not be able to have a full dialogue tonight, but we also need to give him what he needs to be able to provide to us for us to we need to say, yeah, we need to have a workshop, but we also need to provide him what he needs to provide to us. And just saying we need to have a workshop, we all get there and get information does not work. And so,
I mean, we'll all, each one of us will come to the workshop with provided information in which we need for him to answer questions. I have in my backpack a list of questions that I want to ask him. Do you have the questions that you want to ask, or that you need to answer for
Yes.
Mr.?
and I've been, what I'm saying is, I've been having a conversation with Mr. Bosco. The reason why it's on the agenda is for council who also has their own questions and have been looking at this, for us to now tell him what we need him to come to look at, and then when we have our special meeting, he will bring these answers to that. And so if we don't have any questions right now, and the only thing we want to do is set up a meeting, that's fine. But the only way we could talk about this is for it to be on the agenda.
I will provide you with that information through email, and does council have any more questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I might request a motion that if the temporary contract is under your current agenda item, you could authorize the mayor to continue the temporariness of what is currently in place and re-sign another 30, 60 days at a time, so that we don't have any issues with them continuing to act until you do.
Also, I would like to call us out, because due to the fact that we knew we had 120 days to go through this contract, then we should have possibly before
We
this
did.
date.
We did.
We only had one meeting. Did we or did we?
No,
not?
we did an earlier extension during that. After the 120 days, you did an earlier extension already.
Yes, ma'am, but I'm saying, so if that's the case, that means we should have had another meeting, or else we're gonna continue to keep extending if our questions don't feel like they're answered.
Oh, sure, I'll call you out for that too.
Let me just add this one
We'll
point.
make a motion to extend it in case, just in case to cover
I
it.
mean, we just gonna have to.
Okay, I'll accept the motion, but
I'm not gonna let him, but, I move that we extend, USW contract for 30 days, and within those 30 days, could you please provide us with 2 meetings that we can have outside of the city council meeting, so that way when we come back, that all of our questions will be answered, and then we move forward.
Absolutely.
okay. You've heard the motion, ready for the questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let the record show it is unanimous. Okay. Mr. Bostic, could you come up for just a second while we're on USW?
Yes, sir.
In our conversations, one of the areas, in addition to your licenses to cover the city that we don't currently have and state potential violations that were pointed out to us several months ago, the program that we use, our water billing program,
That's correct.
would you, while you're here, because it's more appropriate here, especially since that's been brought up, would you tell them some of the problems that you've encountered with that program?
Sure. So.
Because that's one of the things and features that we're going to benefit from, but because there was a water situation mentioned earlier, I want you to share with them in your experience why. No, hold on, ain't no but. I'm asking the question, yes or no? Go ahead.
Okay, so.
You say you wanna know why and what's going on, well, there's some stuff you don't know, and we're about to share with you, go ahead.
So monthly, I request information from Ms. Durham to put together in our operations report. One of the items that I request is the amount billed to the city residents, whether that be residential, commercial, agricultural, whatever the case may be. And I plug that number into a formula which keeps tracks of the city's accountability. Okay, so that's number one. The accountability for the city right now is about 78% accountable. So you got 22% of unaccounted for water, which is lost revenue within the city. Number two is I asked for the aged receivables. And when I'm looking at the aged receivables, they're not really lining up with what should actually be the city's receivables with the amount of billed water and sewer fees that should have been applied to these particular customers. And then number three is when you look at the aged receivables, the amount of receivables that are aged are tremendous. It's a tremendous amount. It's in somewhere around the $100,000s of dollars. So I don't feel comfortable that those numbers are correct coming out of Quickwater. So that's why it's very important that once we get up underneath the contract with USW, first thing we're going to do is transition the software work order billing system. And we're going to go through and we're going to scrub the files. We're going to go through, do a meter audit. And we're going to make sure that all the accounts are set up correctly and that the revenue that's supposed to be generated for the city is being generated for the city, and that the customers that are in collections are, we're going after those customers, we're turning off people who are not paying their water bills, we're following tit for tat, we're following the city ordinance.
And Ms. Durham, we've been dealing with several months, and there were some problems understanding the quick water billing on this so-called $150,000, $130,000 unpaid water bill that we heard about earlier. And you couldn't even understand the program as to how these numbers came up. Isn't that what we ran into last week?
We knew where the numbers came from, because in that 4-month period that they did get a read, the meter started at 0. And so
5 months,
from August to December, right?
August, September, October, November, December, 5 full months, yes.
Yeah.
But one of the issues we ran into there and several other places with the numerous rereads was at least one or more of our people were having problems reading the numbers. And with rereads, there were problems shown that that was indeed the case with several accounts. And we had to have people go back out and recheck them, am I right? Okay, I just want the record to be clear, while folks are spitting information out here. We've got a lot of problems with our system, we need a new system. And as much as Ms. Durham's been working with it, it's somewhat of a faulty system in terms of looking at numbers. And of course, also you have garbage in, garbage out. So I just wanted to share with you all that there are countless scenarios based on reading. So if the bad numbers put in, folks are coming back saying they owe a lot. Go ahead.
But Mr. Mayor, I think it's, I guess, your responsibility and role to provide us back with that information. Because at the same time, you're over the day-to-day operations, and we, as council members, should be provided that information if a number is wrong, or if we having problems with our water meter, different things along that. Because just as we have issues with the university, we have to go and have that conversation and dialogue. So just as they should come and have that conversation and dialogue, it's not for us. It is, we have to do better communication.
Well, I agree, but as you look at the charter, it's actually council's responsibility to deal with the water sewer stuff. I just do it. But we just have a bad system, and it's come out before, it's come out several times. It really has. It's just a bad system, and it's probably the last program that we need to replace. And this is one of the things, we discussed a new program 1 or 2 years ago, but yes.
Me and Mr. Blasquez had this conversation. One of the things that we talked about, both in the workshop and subsequent meetings, is that our computer system, which is Quickwater, they are recommending AVR, which is an outside company. The conversation, we don't have to be under contract with them we can actually get AVR tomorrow. We need to know a cost, and we need to know what that transition period looks like. The transition is from Quickwater to AVR. And so I want us to make sure that we're not basing everything on this contract. once we start pulling together, we've had USW around for some time, and they can walk us through some of the things that helps us to be able to move forward with them. But we don't want to say that we have to bundle all these things, right? And so if the mayor presents that we need to move from Quickwater to AVR, our downtime or our transition time is 60 days, so from beginning to loading the information to launching the information, who controls the information? Does the city still control the information, or does USW control the information? Those types of mechanics, that allows us to move forward. It gives us a focused time frame. But I don't want us to feel like we have to get caught up in this bundle contract, and it's like if we don't do this bundle contract, we don't continue to move forward with the system, if that's one of the major issues. So I don't know if that's something in the in this temporary piece that we can do.
Like Councilman Jones said, we need to have another meeting because there's a lot of discussion based around this contract. Billing and is just one, operations is another, compliant, there's a lot involved.
Well, the lack of licenses on the city's part is what brought this to the table in the first place, and that's dealing with the state. So we've got to do something with you or someone like you regardless, because we are not in compliant as a standalone.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, if I might, to make you a little more comfortable with where we are on the status of all of this, the exact things that you're talking about are the exact things that after engineering reviewed and after legal reviewed, we put back to the city to say, hey, there's a couple of these boxes here that we don't know enough, and Trilogy doesn't know enough to say, so we need somebody familiar with this to go through these parts of the contract, and it's exactly that sort of thing that the city staff is looking at now. So that's why we don't have a finished contract, it's those exact details.
Item 10, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Discuss and consider resolution for Small Cities Month for National League of Cities. Councilman Owens.
I have the resolution. I have not had an opportunity to get the resolution to council. So I don't know if we want to move this in time, or I can read it out now. What would your pleasure be?
Like all of them, if we haven't had a chance to review them, we never look at them.
All right, thank you.
Item 11, discuss and take action on Mayor Allen's appointments for Board of Adjustments. Councilman Jones.
If I'm not mistaken, were other names sent and suggested to you?
A couple of them came in after the agenda was done.
All right, so I move item 11 to the next city council meeting.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that item 11 be carried over to the next city council meeting. You've heard the motion, ready for the questions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion passed. Item 12, Police Department report, crime statistics has already been taken care of, am I right?
Yes, sir.
Council reports, Councilman Rowland.
I move that we skip council reports due to retirement and due to the rest of our agenda.
And
Is there a second?
second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that council reports be moved to skipped.
Yeah.
Be skip council reports.
And mayor report.
Yeah, and mayor report.
Second.
That's a separate.
Second.
That's a separate piece.
Okay, that's okay.
Got it.
That's what- that's what-
All those in favor say aye. Ayes have it.
You still gotta say all opposed,
All opposed?
nay.
One nay.
I move that we skip mayor reports today as well.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that mayor's reports be skipped as well. You've heard the motion, ready for the question. Unreadiness, council. The charter requires me to keep council informed, and this is that manner that I've been doing it for 3 years. Just want to make sure the motion is appropriate. Now, it's a legal thing, I'm just double checking.
I think the motion is appropriate, you have it in writing here as to the recent activities.
Okay. Okay, so they consider themselves informed. Okay, all in
Also-
favor say aye.
My readiness is that, yes, this is a report, but we only receive one line for each of them. So it's not an update or keeping us along with what is going on day to day. So as we just found out that the services that we use to build our citizens is working inadequately. Like that's not, that wasn't provided to us. So, yes, this is on the report, but this is not further discussion as we see it. So, call for the question.
All in favor say aye. Opposed?
No.
Ayes have it. And for the record, this is not the first time it's come before council and residents that are billing problems. Often we've had several residents come, so it's not news. Okay, item 13, discuss and take action on written street assessment. Councilman Wallace.
And so, me, Jones, and the rest of the council, we've been working with JJ to work on some of the street assessment and use some of the money from the street and drainage budget line item to fix some of these things. So after having a good conversation with JJ, I think he's come with a good plan, which is to take a rating system that we came up with and figure out what were some of the worst streets, fix some of those, and then for some of the more torn down streets, that we come up with more of a strategic plan for that, because of economic costs. So with that being said, the 4 worst streets that we saw was Richards Road, Nikita Street, Bell Street, Hollyhock Street, in terms of potholes, in different aspects. So the idea that JJ gave was for us to put it out for bid, see what companies come back, see what the estimate is, and from there make a decision. So with that, I move that we put Richards Road, Nikita Street, Bell Street, and Hollyhock Street potholes up for bid for companies to give estimates for.
Motion dies for lack of a second.
So, in this, on this item, do we have this, what you just said in writing?
What?
Like right, so I wanna support what you're, for the pothole plan, the amount of money identifying those streets. Do you have that where you can get it to us so we can?
If I'm not mistaken, I thought y'all received a document that had the rating system that had the streets on it.
Yes, you wanted us to allocate, you wanted us to identify several streets, you just named them, and you said to get bids before we can, like, even do that. And I guess, that's something that we don't necessarily, we need some information to tell them what to do, and that's why, if you have that, we can move that, but just saying, it can,
So I believe at the last city council meeting, you asked Mr. Johnson whether or not for those 4 streets, you would have enough money in this year's budget to cover the repairs of the potholes on those streets, and he said yes. And I think what he is looking for is for some parameters to the bidding, you know, in the amount of X number of dollars and consistent with the budgetary, you know, line item already approved by council, or whatever that amount is, if he knows it, or just a little more defined parameters.
I'll work with you, we'll get something done this week.
Okay.
I'll be glad to work with
My
you.
thing
Then we
is-
can bring it back to council with
So
some specific
let
numbers.
me ask this, so like, we got like the number of potholes, like Ridges Road had 5, Nikita Street had 3, Bell Street had 3, Hollyhock had 3 as well. So what more parameters will we need outside of?
because based upon if JJ has, if the money's in the budget, he said it's there. If it's something that's a $1,000, $3,000, once what we already have, the mayor can go ahead and do that tomorrow. And so that's why I'm saying, what are you, if the amount is up a certain amount with all the potholes, then we need to approve a plan or RFP or what you're asking for. So that's why, because I'm saying you asked for a RFP to go out to do this. And we're saying right now, once we've adopted those streets, the mayor can do those streets tomorrow. And so maybe if the motion could be for us to move forward, not about the RFP, but just to get those streets done. That's the directive, that's the motion. But the RFP, we don't need that, so just make that motion so we can.
Because, and the reason why is because we didn't know how much the cost was gonna be in the first place, cause depending on the pothole work, what if it is over the amount that's still left in the budget? We wouldn't know that, so if we just say, okay, do the streets, and we don't know how much is left and how much it's gonna cost, then we could be putting ourselves in a bad spot.
I'll work with you, we'll get the quotes and then we can see about getting it done, it shouldn't be that much. Just Councilman Jones.
Yeah, my disagreement with the proposal is just Richards Road, cause Richards Road, basically the potholes was caused by Franklin Hill, due to development, so I don't think our taxpaying dollars should go pay for a road in which was messed up by developers. So I think that should be a conversation that we have with them before we put Richards Road on that list.
Well, I mean, so put something out, put something
May I
out
say
for a bid.
something?
Put something out for a bid.
Because I've already talked with them about
Yeah,
that.
so if,
Hold on, it's not open, it's
Yeah.
council.
so put something out for bid, does it cost money on the city's part to put something out there?
So what now?
To put something out like, to get, does it cost? Right, so it doesn't cost anything.
That's
so-
okay, but I just don't think that if we're gonna put something out there, I don't think that what you just read off should be on there. That I'd be okay with you reading the next 3 streets after that, but I'm just not gonna say it for Richards Road.
So it'll get done based on the discussion and stuff. What's out here?
Just leave Richards Road out.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, we just add something.
So,
Just leave Richards Road
yeah,
out.
that's fine.
Yeah, we can address
So,
that later.
so I move that we put up a bid for the streets of Nikita Street, Bell Street, and Hollyhock Street. It's about for bid.
For a picture of potholes.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how specific do I have to get.
Well, I think what you're trying to do is to have city council acknowledge the priority to give to the mayor to set out for bid under the current budget.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Second.
it's been properly moved and seconded that, is it Nikita Street?
Nikita.
Nikita Street, Bell, and Hollyhock?
Yes.
Okay, street repairs, give bids for the street repairs on those 3,
Yes, sir.
okay? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Discuss, consider, and take possible action on the city's ordinances and policies regarding utilization of city services, water, metering for private use. Councilman Jones.
All right, so, I wanna say, Mr. Leverett provided, city council with a video approximately about 2 weeks ago, where it looked as if, a developer truck was hooked up to fire hydrant, in the video.